you just unmute yourself and kind of give me a brief summary of what the purpose of like version control or Git is, just kind of in your own words?
It helps better with collaboration. GitHub is essentially a place where you can store your project, whatever it may be, at different instances. Say you have the storyboard set up or you have the view controller set up. Each one of those can be a different instance that you could pull from GitHub.
Yep, definitely used for collaboration. Anything else?
You can also basically like a safety net. So like it will like store multiple save files. So let's say if you want to go back to a particular point, if you've gone too far into your coding, you've messed up in a certain part, you can just go back to a save file and like reset and restart from that point. And it will just save like all your save files in one place.
Yeah, definitely. It's a safety net. I think that's a great, a great way of saying it. That's going to be, at least for now, until you start working with some of your classmates and other students at Lambda School, going to be kind of the biggest thing is it allows us to have the safety net where, on the random off chance that something happens to your computer or you have to, reset it for some reason or your hard drive fails, if we're using Git and also GitHub to put those, somewhere else on a server somewhere, then you know that your code is all good. I mean, just imagine if a company's got an app that, that is sort of their main source of income. If they just have a hard drive die and they lose all of their code, that would be a little more than a little bit of a pain for them, right? So having multiple computers be able to have that same code and also have it be stored on the internet is a great way to sort of prevent that. And also, like Sam said, kind of allow for that collaboration here. So we're just going to kind of go through a few of these. Like I'm going to talk about just doing a real quick sort of summary slideshow presentation of just kind of some basic functions of Git that we'll be using very often. And then I'm going to make sure that we're all set up with Git on your computer. So hopefully you have configured it, but if you haven't, I'll run through it with you. So we'll kind of look at that. So, all right. So Git is the most widely used form of what you would call version controller, kind of like they were saying, just sort of allowing us to save our code or our project in different states at any given time. So with that, how we sort of use Git is by using a few different commands. And we're going to be using the terminal specifically because if you can do Git using a terminal, like using the command line, you can use in theory, can use any app that uses Git when you get to a job. But using Git in the terminal is the most common too. And honestly, it becomes faster than just using an actual app. So let's talk about a few just sort of different things and kind of what they do. So the first one is going to be cloning. This is going to be one that you'll be doing every day from now on, which is going to be, you're going to fork something, which we'll talk about forking in a few minutes, but we're kind of just talking about Git alone, kind of not specifically related to GitHub. Cloning is the process of, if I've got some code up here, whoops, I forget that breaks it. Okay, I can't do the drawing. Okay, so if I've got some code up here, we'll just say this is on GitHub or some server somewhere. If I want to get that code down, we kind of had two options yesterday as far as getting that code. One was downloading the zip, which is what we did. But there's also another and a better way called cloning. So what cloning does is it lets us pull all of that code down to our computer, but it has the added benefit of getting all of the different save states that kind of come along with that repository. Whereas if you just download the zip, it just is like wherever it's at, it doesn't actually have all of those different states. So you can go back to previous commits. So we'll be cloning things very often from now on so that we can kind of have all of that history is what you would call it, to be able to go back or forth or whatever we wanted to. So that's all it is we just say git clone, and then we say, hey, here's the URL or that sort of link to the repository that I want you to clone, and it just goes and grabs it and pulls it down, and that's all. And we'll be doing some examples of this. This is just more on a conceptual level here. Just real quick, I can't, while I'm presenting, I can't have Slido up, like I can't see my Slido questions. So if you have any questions during this presentation, just feel free to unmute yourself. You can interrupt me and I won't get mad or anything. So I just want to make sure that we answer any questions that you have. All right, so let's say that you are actually coding something. You've got some code here, and you've got this all tracked under Git. So maybe you're like, okay, sweet, I have kind of got my code to a place where I'm happy with it. I want to save it so that I know that all of that code that I just wrote is going to be secure. And maybe Patrick is working on the project with me. I can give that to him as well. What happens is you make the changes kind of represented here with these scribbles, and we're going to say git commit, and then we're going to say, all right, well, this is what I did. And we always give a message with our commit to say basically the changes that we did, just so that we can be a little organized. It's a great thing with commits to be able to say, here are the changes that I did. Maybe I updated my table view controller or something, so that when I look at this history, I'll see all of these descriptions and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's the one I want to go back to, because I know, I want to go back to when I started my storyboard or whatever it is. So when we commit something, that kind of goes over to the repository, to Git, and it says, all right, this is kind of the state that I want to save my app at right now. It's like, okay, I'll save that for you. So you have, when we say repository, it's a little bit confusing because you have a GitHub repository, but just a folder that's being tracked under Git when it's looking out for any changes in that folder is itself a repository. So when I commit, all I'm doing is I'm saying on my computer, go ahead and just track those changes and save them where they're at right now. If I want to make sure that I, put those changes somewhere else in case my hard drive fails or for whatever other reason, we need to do what is called a push. So a push would be like, okay, I've got these new commits, these new save states on my computer, and maybe Patrick's over here like, hey, I need those changes. So I say, okay, well, we can go ahead and push those changes up to GitHub or some remote repository. And that takes all of my save states that I've created on my computer locally and says, hey, server, here these are, here you go. Can you kind of hold those for me so that Patrick or whoever else can go ahead and grab those from me? Are there any questions so far? We feel okay? Okay. So when Patrick is ready to get my changes, what he does is he does a pull. So just the opposite of push, he pulls, and it's going to say, all right, let me go up to, in my case, GitHub, and it's going to see, oh, sweet, I've got some changes from somewhere else. Let me go ahead and grab those, and it will pull those down and put them on his cloned repository that he has on his computer. Do we feel okay so far? Okay. All right. What we're going to do is we are going to kind of get you all set up, and I want to make sure that we are all set up here. Hopefully, this shouldn't take too much time. So a couple things that I want you to do is if you go into your sort of top menu bar here, you should see this little hourglass icon. If you click on it, it's going to pull up this spotlight search. and I want you to search for terminal and open it. Will you go ahead and give me a little yes check mark in that participants list in Zoom when you have that up, please? If you need help with something, let me know, and I'm happy to go over anything again. Okay. Waiting on a couple people. Yeah, if you use command space, that'll also bring it up. You can also, pull this up and find it. It's usually in this little other folder as well. It's, I believe that's F4. One thing that I personally do is I have my terminal just down here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. I have my terminal down here always. So I just, if you want, you can hold the, you can just click and hold on the little terminal icon. If you go to options, you can check this keep in dock and just make sure that it's always there so that you don't have to, go and find it, use the spotlight or anything. It's just nice to kind of keep it in the dock so you have easy access.
How did you get the spacers?
What's that?
How did you get the spacers?
I will send a little snippet to you that you can use after.
Oh, of course. Not something easy.
It's just a single line that you have to do in here. I just don't have it on hand right now. Okay, so the terminal, it may be a little bit scary for some of you, and I totally get that. When I started learning iOS development, I was deadly afraid of it. I didn't know how to use it, and I was always scared that I was going to break my computer or something when I used it. Luckily, it's pretty hard to break your computer, especially it's pretty hard to break a Mac, and everything we do related to Git is inherently safe because that's kind of the point of Git, is to be safe and save things. So don't feel afraid of the terminal, even if you sort of inherently feel like that kind of to begin with. Let me pull up, I have a little, there we go. So I have a little kind of cheat sheet that I'll give you here. Let me just update this. There we go. Okay. So first of all, we're just going to do a couple commands here in the terminal, just to have you feel fairly comfortable with it. I pasted them in the iOS 15 channel, but you can just watch me here. We're going to go through each one. So with this, what the terminal is a way for you to run commands, but it's also sort of a way for you to navigate throughout your computer's file system, just like you would in Finder, right? If I pull up Finder, this is just a way for me I can go to my documents or my desktop or whatever, and it lets me just kind of run through all of my files. So the terminal does the same thing, and one way that you can kind of see where you're at is this PWD. So this stands for Print Working Directory, or basically the folder that you're at. So if I do that, it says that I'm at users Spencer Curtis, which is my home folder. So it's this same folder that I've got right here. And now that I know where I'm at, maybe you want to see, okay, well, what files do I have in this folder? We can use the ls folder, or sorry, the ls command. And you'll see it matches exactly what I've got down here. Actually has a couple more. Interesting. But that's a way that you can see it's the terminal at its sort of most base form is really just a way of you kind of visualizing differently what Finder does for you, right? And so you could say, I want to go into my documents folder or something like that. What we do is we say CD space, and that stands for change directory, or just basically move folders. And I'm going to say documents. And hit enter here. One thing that's kind of common is you may not see, like when I hit enter here, it looks like nothing happened. Generally, if it looks like nothing happened, that means it worked. It'll usually yell at you if something doesn't work. So if I do pwd again here, then it says, oh yeah, you are in documents. So we've got a couple sort of shortcuts as far as representing like the current folder that we're in and the folder above it. So oftentimes you're like, okay, well maybe I want to go back to my home folder. That's sort of up a level in this file system. So we could say cd ... and that represents the folder sort of above the one that we're at right now. So we could say cd ... And then if we do pwd again, it kicks us back to my home folder. Just real quick, it depends on kind of where your Mac is at right now. If you're using High Sierra or Catalina, I'd kind of assume most of you are on Catalina, but last cohort we had a couple people on, sorry, not High Sierra, Mojave. If I have like a % sign right here, if you have a $sign, it's the same thing. You don't have to type this % sign or anything like that. That's just kind of a little, basically saying start the command here. Okay, so that's like basic navigation. As far as it goes, if you want to, if I say go find this specific folder in the terminal, then you kind of have to do that same thing. CD, go into a folder, figure out what the next folder is, and kind of keep going down the line there, unless you know the whole path. A simpler way, which I think is really nice, is if I say, well, let's do this. Go ahead and open up Finder. And I don't really particularly care where this folder is. I'm going to put mine in my documents folder. And what we're going to do is create a folder so you can store sort of all of your Lambda School code. If you already have one, great. You can use that. Just find it in Finder. I don't have one for this cohort, so I'm just going to make a new folder here. So I'm just going to select my documents, jump up to this little gear here and do new folder. And then I'm going to give it a name. So for me, I'm going to call it development iOS 15. Whatever you want to call it is great. It doesn't particularly matter. So I'm going to say this is where we're going to be putting all of our projects from now on. Just for me, I like to try to keep my files organized, so this way I kind of know where all of the guided projects at the very least are going to be. So something you can do is you could navigate through it like we did here by saying cd documents and then cd development iOS 15. There's this really cool trick where you can just go into your terminal and just say cd space. So just like you're going to cd into a specific folder. And then if you drag the folder that you want to go to right from Finder into your terminal window, then it will give you that whole path or that location to the folder. So you don't have to type that whole thing out. It's just kind of like a freebie, which can be nice. So if I do this now and do pwd, we can see I was at my my home folder, excuse me. And now after I CD'd into there, I'm in my documents folder, or my development iOS 15 folder, sorry. Okay, when you are here into your personal development folder, will you give me a yes check mark and a no if you need help, or just feel free to unmute yourself as well if you need help with something?
Yeah, it didn't work for me. It's not like dragging when I try to drag it to the terminal.
Okay. You might have to click somewhere like out, like if the text, no, it should actually be fine.
Sometimes if you're like in the terminal window, you have to be like clicked into the Finder window to grab it.
Okay, yeah, it worked. It worked. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks.
That's a great point, Patrick. Thank you.
And then I put PD, right? PWD.
Yeah, just to make sure that you're in the right folder.
And I guess this kind of blew my mind, but you're able to change the directory to lowercase documents. And if you did a PWD, it showed lowercase documents, even though ultimately it's not that, right? It's uppercase D.
Yeah, if you're used to using terminal commands like with Linux, it's case sensitive, but on macOS, it's not case sensitive at all. So you don't have to worry about getting the exact, uppercase and lowercase characters. It just is able to figure it out, which is, for me, kind of nice because I forget how I capitalize things sometimes. I'm not terribly consistent.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that the name completion only works case sensitively. So if you did a capital D and you hit tab, it bonks at you because there is no matching because there's multiple matches. And if you hit it again, then it shows you the list of all the capital D. But interestingly, with the lowercase d, that doesn't work.
Right, yeah.
You've got Docker, but
yeah,
do CD capital D.
CD capital D, then yeah, then it grabs it. Yeah. A little bit interesting. Personally, I use something called Oh My ZSH, which is kind of like a more interactive way of using the terminal. It shows folders a little bit easier for you, and it tends to be a little easier to work with. I disabled it for today, but normally that's what I would use to kind of get around that. And it would, in theory, let you actually choose whether it's a lowercase or capital D. I have a video on that if you're curious about it that I can send you all. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to grab if I can spell, I grab a repo real quick that we're going to clone or fork and clone together. You know what, actually, let's, I think that's going to be actually your afternoon project over now. Okay. Well, we're going to do a project that's actually pretty similar to your afternoon project, but I think it's worth practicing together. GitHub can be kind of scary, or Git and GitHub can be kind of scary at first. So, all right, cool. So what I want you to do is go to this folder here, or folder. So in the iOS 15 channel, I just slapped a link to this About Me. Sorry, this About Me repository. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word. What I want you to do is click this little fork button here up at the top. And we'll talk about forking here. So when you click this fork button, this is a GitHub feature. So it's kind of confusing. Git and GitHub are so closely named that people tend to, at the very first, kind of put them together sort of inseparably. What this is going to say is, hey, this repository online is actually owned by Lambda School, which means you won't have access to be able to like push your own code to it because you don't own it, basically. So what you can do is you can say, well, I really like all this code, but maybe I want to kind of put my own stuff in there and kind of go my own separate direction, kind of like a fork in the road. That's essentially what a fork is. So if you click this here, it's going to say, well, it might not actually say that for you. But then it's going to say that it's going to take a few seconds to fork it. It's got this kind of funny animation. And then now we can see I've got this. Well, mine's called About Me 1, but now it's on my GitHub repository, or yeah, I am the owner of this repository, this fork here. What this now lets me do is I now have access to be able to like commit whatever I want. I could delete all the files, add whatever files I want, it doesn't matter. And I have access because it's sort of like my own carbon copy of it. So in order to grab this down, how do we get this code into like onto our actual computers? Does anyone remember what that's called?
Do we clone it?
You clone it. Yep, exactly. So let's go ahead and do that. So what you're going to do is click this clone or download button. If yours says clone with HTTPS, that's what I assume you're all going to have. That's cool. I'm not going to use that because my Mac is a little bit weird with HTTPS right now, but you should all be fine with this. And this is where we're going to have to do a little bit of setup here. So just kind of keep that there for now. We're not going to quite use it yet, but what I want you to do is I want you to, let's go to now. Let's see. Or we'll say GitHub git config. All right, I'm gonna give you guys a couple. I always forget where these are. There we go. Okay. All right, I need you to run a couple commands for me just so I can kind of see where everyone is at. So it's going to be little orange text in the iOS 15 channel. Oops. Okay, so if you paste that, do you, get this back? Will you give me a yes or a no in your, in the...
Hey, Spencer?
Yeah.
Should we still be in the same folder we CD'd into, or should we just be...
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
At this point, that doesn't matter. So if it shows that, then great. If not, let me know and we can go over how to fix that.
Apparently you have to be careful when you copy paste, because if you select like a little bit too much, it selects some hidden character and makes your terminal freak out.
Oh, good to know. I'll not use the little I'll not make it orange next time so that doesn't happen. Thanks for the heads up.
Those are the hidden quotes in Slack. They're kind of notorious for that. It happened to me a couple times.
All right, if we're good with that, does anyone not have this? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, cool, awesome. So the next thing I need you to do is I need us to check if we have a username set up. So go ahead and grab that and you can paste that into your terminal window. Sorry, let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So when you type that, this git config -- global user.name, you should see your name in here. If you do not, then all you need to do is you can type the up arrow or you can paste it again. If you type the up arrow, all it's going to do is bring up your last command. And then all you need to do is put a space and then add, a string that says like Spencer Curtis. So you just add that onto what you already had and then hit enter. Sorry if a lot of you have this set up. I just want to make sure that we all have the setup. Otherwise, we can't really do the guided project. So, all right. And then once you do that, then you should be able to jump back to the, just not putting in your name there, and it should show your name. So will you give me a yes when you have that showing your name? Okay. And then similarly, we're just going to set up our email. So go ahead and run this just to make sure that you have a commit email address set up like mine right here.
Do you care which email we use, just that it's an email?
Yeah, probably, preferably it should be the one that you use for GitHub, whatever that same email address is. Okay, will you give me a yes when you have that working? Okay.
Looks like Zhang tossed into the chat the error he got, fatal, not in a Git directory.
That shouldn't matter. I'm not in a Git directory either. Can you paste in what you put into the terminal? You can just hit the up arrow to grab that again. Oh, so just do -- global with no space between the dashes. Okay, awesome, good. So the last thing we're going to do is, if I can find it, we are going to make it so that you don't have to put in your password every time you this one right here. So when you are going to like push some code up to GitHub, it's going to ask you for your GitHub username and password, which is a pain if you're committing and pushing all the time like we will be. So we're just going to tell it to make the macOS keychain basically store that username and password. So we have to put it in once, and then from there, it should never ask us for it again, which is fantastic. So just go ahead and throw in that right there. And let me know if this one isn't working. We should all have the keychain installed, but I believe a couple times ago we had an issue with this. So let me know if something's not working. Go ahead and give me a yes or a no when you have this working. And if it worked, it is gonna just look like nothing happened, and that's fine. Sorry, this is not the funnest lesson, I know. There's kind of a lot of setup here, but once we do this right, we don't have to do a lot of this ever again. So just kind of getting it out of the way as as quickly as possible is what we're trying to do here. Okay, there are a few people that haven't put yes. Does anyone need help? Okay, all right, I'll assume that we're all good then. So now that we have that set up, we're kind of all ready to go as far as the cloning and pushing process goes. So I'm gonna jump back to our repository here in our fork. And we're just gonna grab that clone or download button, and you can either select all of this text here and hit Command-C, or you can just click this little copy to pasteboard button and it will just copy it automatically for you. And then what we're going to do, oops, there we go, is we're gonna say git, actually, sorry, real quick. So I want to make sure that we are in the right folder. So for me, I actually just checked, I did pwd, and I'm not in that folder that we just made for my development, iOS 15. So I'm just gonna do that same thing. You may be in the right place and that's fine, and you can just watch here. I'm just gonna do that CD, and then just drag in that folder, sorry, CD space, and then drag in the folder. Check it, okay, we're good. So once we're here, then we can say, all right, well, we have this URL of the repository that we want to sort of pull down from GitHub here. So we can say git clone, then I'm gonna paste in that URL and then hit enter here. And it should kind of give you a bunch of text here. It says it's cloning, it's unpacking. And what we can see here is now in Finder, I have this about me for me -1. Oops. Okay, did this not work for anyone?
It's like Gregory
Oh,
animation.
okay, what's not working with yours?
So when I went and put it into the terminal, instead of, let me see if I can share my screen. Should I share my screen or?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if you want to.
So yeah, when I went and put it into the terminal, it said no such file or directory.
Okay, so all you'll need to do is you'll need to do So in the terminal, just type git space clone space, and then paste in that URL.
Oh, okay.
So it always is going to need that prefix there. But you
Oh,
should,
thank you.
yeah, no worries. Is anyone else having issues with anything? Okay, cool. So what we're going to do now is just make some changes to this and kind of go through this committing process a couple times. So let's go ahead and just double click this .playground.zip here and just unzip it so we can actually use the playground and open up this playground here. So these have some instructions here. We're going to just start with like our name here, just so that we can go with something to commit at the very least. Right here, if this ever pulls up for you, this is just the playground's kind of acting funny and not really actually realizing that it has permissions. So all you need to do is just put in your computer's password. Sometimes you'll see that, sometimes you won't.
Spencer, how do we what's in the editor of Xcode you showed us yesterday? How to make this all look a little bit cleaner?
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's editor show rendered markup. For whatever reason, it doesn't stay like that between playgrounds. There we go. So right now, don't really worry about these instructions. All I want you to do at this point is just to come down here to the bottom of the code and just make a variable called my name. And we'll just say, just put your name in there as a string. And now we can like finally talk about more Git commands here. So once you've got that, go ahead and just hit File, Save, or Command S to save the playground here. And then I'm going to jump back to my terminal. And what we're going to do is we're going to go inside of this About Me folder. So if I do the ls again, I can see we're right here in this iOS 15 folder, so it's only just got this one About Me folder. So we could either do cd space and drag in the About Me folder, or we could just do cd about me-1. And sorry, I haven't written everyone's names yet. Like Mark was saying, if you start typing something out, the terminal's pretty smart. If you start typing like CDA, capital A, and I hit the tab key, then it should autocomplete it and say, oh, did you mean this? And I'm like, yes, I did. So that's great. And I can just hit enter there to go into that folder. So here's kind of behind the scenes what Git is doing, and you're welcome to just watch me here. You can follow along if you want, but you don't have to. So when you put a folder under Git, you're saying, all right, well, everything in this folder, look out for any changes to it, when any files added, when one's deleted, when even within the code that I have in my playground, that gets changed, let me know, and then I can, save those changes, any of those that I want. How it actually does it is it has a hidden folder called .git. This is kind of small, I apologize. If you want to show hidden files in macOS, you just need to just kind of have a Finder window selected. Then you can do Command-Shift-, and that will toggle it from showing it or not. So I have this .git folder, and that's ultimately the thing that's kind of keeping track of things. And that's how I know that this is a folder that is being tracked by Git. You don't ever touch anything in here, but at the very least, it just shows, okay, well, this folder is kind of being tracked by Git. One thing we can do also is there are a few basic commands that you'll be using with Git, and one of my favorites, just to kind of see overall kind of what the status of my repository is git status. So if we do that, then it's going to let us know, okay, you've got, you know, all of this kind of these changes. So it's going to say which files aren't tracked, which ones are changed, etc., and anything that you need to commit. If yours doesn't say this and it looks, sorry, don't just watch me here. If yours says something like this, like fail not a Git repository, that may mean that you're not in the right folder. So you'll just need to check and see, okay, well, you know, just do that pwd and see, oh, shoot, I'm in my home folder. That's not a Git folder. So let me navigate over to the place that I'm trying to go to. So that pwd can be really nice just for seeing like where you're at and making sure, am I in the right place? Maybe not. But if you do get status when you're in a folder that has that little hidden Git folder, it should show you this or something similar to this. Can you give me a yes if you see something similar to this when you do get status? And let me know if something's not working for you. Am I going at an okay pace? Do you want me to slow down?
I think you're fine.
Okay.
I'm showing a .ds_store also above about me. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Yeah, so the DS store is a system file that macOS puts in its folders. Generally, we ignore those files, so we'll kind of talk about how to ignore files later in Git. But for now, you don't have to worry about it. If you have that DS store file, it's just kind of something you can not really worry about right now. It's not going to hurt anything. Thanks for bringing that up, though. Not sure why I don't have one, but. Okay, awesome. All right, so what we're going to do is now say, all right, well, we just added our variable for our name. So maybe we're like, sweet, that's our, you know, our feature that we want to finish. It's very small, it's a single line, but we want to make sure that we save that so we don't have to write it again. So what we're going to do is create a commit. So just kind of going back to that, that keynote presentation, if I pull it back up. We just made some changes here in our playground here. So what we're going to do is say, hey, Git, go ahead and save those changes in one of those sort of save states here so that we can kind of keep track of that and come back to it if we ever wanted to. So what we have to do is first have to say what files we want to actually commit or save. So think about you having, I don't know, 100 files or something, and maybe you only want to save 10 of them that you've changed. Maybe you're like, well, I'm still working on these other 90 files. I don't quite want to change those yet or save those yet. We just add files individually, and then we say these are the ones that we want to save. So even if you have changes in one file and changes in another file, you can basically say, do I want to just save the changes in this one file or in everything, or kind of any mix in between, depending on how many files you have. So it's kind of, Git tries to be helpful. It tries to tell us kind of what's going on. So it's going to say, hey, you have some untracked files, which means if they're untracked, then you can't really commit them or save them. So what it's saying is git add, and then you paste in the file to include it in what will be committed. So we're just going to do that. We'll say git add, and I'm going to say about me dot playground. And you can just do git add space and then just come up here and copy that text. That works too. And as is the recurring thing with the terminal, if you hit enter and it looks like nothing happened, that's probably a good thing. So I'm just going to do git status again and see kind of what happened here. So if I look at this now, then I get that we've got this now, instead of untracked files here, it says changes to be committed, which means if they're in green and they're to be committed, then that actually kind of gets bundled up in that saved state here. It's a little bit weird that we added one file, but then we have sort of two here. It actually turns out that playgrounds themselves are basically folders themselves, and that's kind of what's happening there. So don't really worry about that too much, but if this was like a normal Swift file, you'd only see one thing.
Hey Spencer, what's a .ds_store file?
Yeah, it's a system file that macOS puts in there. You don't have to worry about it for now. We'll talk about how to ignore it later, but if you have that, that's fine. I honestly don't know why I don't have one myself, but it's not going to hurt anything by having it there. Okay, so now we've sort of made those changes and we're saying, hey, Git, be tracking any of these changes. So now for like, this is where I want to bundle up my code and save it. Then we can just say git commit, and then I'm going to do -m, and then I'm going to put quotations here. What this means is we're calling the git commit command to say, hey, I want to commit these changes. If you just type git commit and hit enter, that's fine. It just pulls you into a different text editor, and it's kind of a little bit more work, honestly, to just like get out of the text editor itself. And all it's wanting you to do in that editor is just to create a message for your commit. And so we just use this kind of nice little flag here to say -m or message, and we're just going to kind of inline write our message here. With commit messages, you just want to be descriptive. So as an example, what would we say that we did in our playground here?
Create a variable with full name.
Yeah. So I just created a variable for my name. Obviously, in sort of a more real world situation, you would be committing maybe after you finish an entire feature or something. So like finished your profile view or finished a certain animation or something like that. But just be descriptive. Be concise, but also descriptive. I think being too concise is maybe a bad thing, but they tend to say try to aim for around 50 characters or so. Not that you absolutely have to follow that. Whoops.
How often should you be committing? Because I have a habit of saving it, but when you're using like Unity Hub, it's constant. Like you commit as often as you make changes. But how often should we make changes to be sure that we're good?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can kind of take it two ways. At the very least, to get in the habit of committing, if you're not, which it maybe sounds like you are personally, I would say maybe commit every 20 minutes, every half an hour or so. In sort of a more real world situation, I would do it often, many multiple times a day, but you don't have to be committing every 5 minutes or so. It would be more like let me pull up yesterday's instructions, for example, if we kind of look at that. Whoa, that's not where I want it to go. Like if we take the knock list that you guys did yesterday, if we were to commit the same thing, what I would probably do is maybe well, these steps are like kind of small, but you know, it's like create a function. Like that's fine if you just want to create a function. You're like, okay, that's a fairly large chunk of code. Let me do that. Or it could just be, like I said, finishing a feature or finishing one file to the point where you're like, I'm satisfied with this. This is kind of more or less where I want it to be. I want to save that. So there is no exact interval to commit at, but I would say a good rule of thumb would be 20, 30 minutes if you're not used to it. Getting in the habit of committing is going to be super important. I'm going to kind of harp on it fairly often, and I'm going to have the TLs be kind of looking out for that. So I want you guys to be committing at fairly regular intervals. So if I see an afternoon project that has like 2 commits between right after lunch to the end of the day, that means potentially you can lose 4 or 5 hours of work if you haven't been committing those save states. So the closer the intervals, the less code that you potentially lose to an extent, although I wouldn't do it every 5 minutes. So kind of up to you. Does that make sense-ish? It was a long roundabout answer, so sorry about that. And it's hard, it's just kind of up to you. But committing more often than not is definitely better. So once we hit enter here, then it's gonna kind of give us a bunch of garbage basically here. Just give us our commit message, say that I changed 2 files, you may have 3 if you have that DS store or more, that's okay. And now what we've done is we've said, okay, sweet, I have saved that into that state. So if I check git status now, that's totally fine if it says 5. No worries on that. So if I do git status now, you'll see that there is no red files nor are there green files like we had before, but it says your branch is ahead of origin master by 1 commit. Use git push to publish your local commits. What this means is we have the git, I guess, let me jump back to this. Looking at this, the way that we kind of represent a place like GitHub or GitLab or whatever online somewhere would be called a remote. So the default name for a remote is origin. And that's what we're saying here. So it's saying, hey, your branch is ahead of your GitHub's master branch by 1 commit. So if you want to put those up to GitHub so it can also have those changes, then you need to call git push. Mark, that looks fine. Is there anything wrong with it? Oh, do you?
It just seems like, yeah, I think myself and Harmony as well had
Interesting.
3 extra files.
Okay, if you have that, then let's. It's not going to hurt anything to just do this again. Thanks for telling me. I'm
Yeah,
not.
I also had all those files. I was wondering what to do about them, so I just did git add period just so we could get along.
Yeah, so I don't know why mine's not doing that. I'm wondering why there are inconsistencies here.
We downloaded different files though, right? Essentially.
Well, we forked the same project though.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. So for that, yeah, what we're gonna have you do for now, and I'll talk about why this is maybe not the best thing either later in the project, or we can kind of have a further conversation on it. Just go ahead and do git add period. Does anyone remember what the 2 period stands for?
Going above where we were two spots before, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, it's the folder above the one that we're at right now. So 1 single period just means the folder that we're in. So when we say git add period, what it's saying is, I'm just writing this here, add all the files in this folder, basically. So it's just kind of like a blanket statement, just like add everything. There's kind of some downsides to this, unless you set it up correctly. So we'll be talking about those later, but for now it's totally cool. So let's go ahead and do that git add period. I don't think mine's gonna have anything. So I can't really commit with you, but I'll still write it out. And once you do that, we can just say git commit -m and just say something like, add the rest of the files or something like that. Yours is going to look different here after you commit because, again, I don't have any changes. But it should look more or less like this one here with X amount of files changed.
So what is showing to me, it's so I added git add node and it says fatal is outside repository.
Sorry, I should have been more clear about that. Just do git add period, just one dot.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to show an example, but I think that was more confusing than helpful. Something that's awesome, I've done this a couple times, but if you hit the up arrows, then you can kind of get back to what you did before, and it'll save like a bunch of your commands. So you can kind of keep hitting the up arrow and down arrows to go back to all of the commits or the commands that you wrote in. So that can be useful so you don't have to keep writing things over and over. Okay, so if you do get status after you commit now, can you give me a yes if you have this, or it may say 2 or X amount of commits for you, and that's fine, but it's just something similar to this.
Yeah, I suspect a lot of us are getting the uncommitted, the DS store, but otherwise that's what it looks like.
Okay. Yeah, the DS store is so finicky. Just don't worry about that. It's not going to hurt anything.
So I added git add dot enter, and it shows me like nothing happened.
That's fine. And then you'll just need to, I did that same thing and it doesn't do anything, or it looks like it doesn't do anything. Then you'll just need to do a commit after that and you should be good to go. That's the confusing part about the terminal, is it's not necessarily very indicative of what it's actually doing. Okay, let's take a break here. We passed the hour. Generally, I like to take breaks right at the hour. So we'll come back in 5 minutes and then we'll kind of finish up this whole committing and pushing process and kind of go through the process a couple more times to feel more comfortable with it. So I will see you in about 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Go ahead and turn on your camera so we know you're here, and we'll jump back into it. Okay, so what we kind of left off at, just to recap, is we changed our playground. We've committed that playground at least once, maybe a couple times, and that's cool. And now it's saying, all right, well, our branch on our local machine, on our computer, is ahead of GitHub. Remember that GitHub represents sort of the remote repository, or sorry, Origin represents the remote repository by default. And it's master branch. We haven't talked about branches. They're not something that you have to worry about for a while. So I think we're going to come back to it later. I don't want to confuse you a ton today. I know that this is probably a little bit overwhelming for some of you already. So we'll kind of chunk out Git into a few different lessons here. And all we're going to do now is we're going to try using this Git push here. And this is where you're going to need your GitHub username, so the email address and your password here. Mine's not going to do it unless I can, like, actually, hold on. GitHub credentials. Maybe I can clear them real quick for me. That'd be kind of cool. Ugh. Oh, cool. All right, let's see if that works. I'm gonna just try to have it works like yours should. So if we do git push here, don't do what I just did. If we do git push, dang it still worked. Okay, that's lame.
Is there a reason you don't want us to have our credentials in so we don't get that automatic functionality?
No, what I was trying to do was to pull out my credentials so it would make me put mine in again like you would have to.
Yeah, I've got mine set up to do it automatically as well. Like, I'm wondering why we don't all do that.
It should be automatically done. Way back here when we set the that credential helper somewhere, in theory, it should set it so that we just have to put it in once and should never ask again.
I got it because I've already put it in once. It's stored. I get it.
Exactly, yeah. So for you, it's probably going to say, is anyone willing to share their screen if it says, like, what is your username for GitHub? Does anyone have that? Or does it give you something else?
Yeah,
I have that.
Okay, do you mind sharing your screen?
How to share screen?
It is, if you click on Zoom, the Zoom window, there's a little share icon. It should be green at the bottom of the window with a little arrow in it.
Wait, oh yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so here, if you have what Lydia has here, then what we need to put in is your email address here. The one that you use for GitHub. Okay, once you've got that, go ahead and hit enter. And then you'll need to put in your password. So don't worry, it's not going to show your password. So please pay attention right here because everyone seems to miss this, or at least someone seems to miss this every cohort. When you put in a password in the terminal, it won't show anything. So it won't even look like Lydia is typing at all. So you'll just have to write your password right. Otherwise, because you can't see if you're typing it wrong. So that's a little bit of a pain. But you can just put in your password, and once that's done, you can hit enter, and that should, in theory, push it up. Yep, perfect. And all of this text, let me highlight it here. So all of this stuff after you do git push is normal. That's what you'll see every time that you push, and that means it worked. So that's good. Okay. So thank you for sharing your screen. That is awesome. So in theory, from now on, you shouldn't have to put in that username and password again once that's done. Who is getting the error? Okay, can you share your screen real quick? We can take a look at it.
Yeah, give me one moment.
Authentication fit. Interesting. I'm wondering why it's not asking you. Can you? Interesting. Do you randomly have like two-factor authentication on your GitHub account?
I think he just typed in his password wrong. Is the problem?
I never.
He never put it in. It doesn't look like. Can you just try git push space -u space origin space master? It's probably going to do the same thing, but and hit enter there. Oh, okay. Maybe you're right. Why I'm not sure. Did it ask for your username and password last time? No?
No, it didn't.
I don't know why that happened. So the username is just going to be your email address that you use for GitHub. But go ahead and hit enter there. And then password is going to be whatever your password is. And again, we won't see it, neither will you.
Yeah, mine did the same thing, but once I put my email and password in, it was fine after repushed.
You might just have to. So just to be clear, that's going to be your password for whatever your GitHub password is.
Yeah.
So
maybe I've forgotten it. Damn.
that could be.
I had GitHub open here.
Just don't show us your password.
Yeah, here, I'll have you stop sharing your screen.
All right.
And we can.
So what do I do right now then? If I
just go ahead and follow along. All we're really going to do is go through the process of committing again, just kind of getting in that that flow. So when we get pushed, just
Okay. All right.
It's not much that you'll be missing. And I'll make sure that one of the TLs can get with you and make sure that you're all set up for the afternoons. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so and that's really our process here. So from now on, once we've forked something, we've cloned it, really the whole process here is like this. And I'm going to paste this into Slack just so we can kind of all see it here. It's you make some changes. So you know, if you're working on an afternoon project, you are following along with the instructions, make some changes. So let's go ahead and jump back into this project here, this playground, and keep going with some, you know, some things that it wants us to do. So let's add our hometown here. That's kind of the next thing on this list here. So I'll just do var hometown equals Bill. Yeah, you could try using your username as well. I always use my email, but that would maybe fix it as well. So just, make that one hometown, and we'll just kind of go through this process of these are the changes, let's add them, we'll commit them and push them, and just kind of go through this cycle again. All right. So I'm going to pull over my terminal window, and I just kind of want to highlight something here. This is a very common sort of workflow that I have is I don't generally close my terminal window while I'm working. I just kind of like put it in the background. You could hit this little yellow minimize button to throw it down here into your dock, and then you can grab it. The problem with like closing your terminal window is when you open a new one, it's going to kick you back to your home folder. And then you have to, go through and navigate back to whatever folder that you were working on. So I just generally keep mine open the whole time. Otherwise, you'll just have to kind of navigate back there. So if we do get status again, then we should see at the very least one change, which is in this contents.swift of our playground. There's more, that's okay. So let's just go through, and I want you to try to add the changes. So I'm going to copy this here. So we just made the changes. So go ahead and add them, and then commit them. And if you're able to, push them to GitHub. And we'll kind of have you try to do that on your own here. So I'll give you 3 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and go over it. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and we can talk about it. Oh, good. I'm glad it worked. That's awesome. I'm really curious. When someone pushes, will you let me know if it makes you ask for your password again or not? Hopefully we've set it up so you shouldn't have to, but.
So it doesn't ask for my password and account right now.
Did it give you all of this stuff when you tried to push it?
Yes.
Then you're good. It should never ask you for your password again.
Okay.
That's always a pain when it just you're committing. You don't want to keep putting in your password over and over again. So we just set it up so that macOS itself will take care of putting in the password for you.
Okay, I got it.
Good. That's awesome. I'm glad it worked for you. Is anyone having any troubles with anything right now?
Mine keeps saying no changes added to commit.
Okay. You might just have to go back into the playground, and you could even just like hit the enter key a couple times and save it, just file save or command S, and then try to add those changes again. Okay, if you're not quite done, that's okay. Just follow along with me. I'm gonna kind of go through it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, well, I already did get status. So that's something I like to do all the time is if I'm just like not sure where I'm at, get status is like the safest thing to do. It's just gonna tell you what's going on. It doesn't change anything. It just says, hey, like this is kind of an overview of where your repository is at. So it's really nice to just kind of do and see what's going on. So I'm going to say, all right, let's add this. So I'm just going to do git add and paste that in there, or at the very least right now, we could just do git add period. And I'll just do git status again. I'm doing git status just to illustrate things to you. You don't have to do git status after everything if you know what's going on, but I'm just kind of doing it just to try to show things. So it says, all right, I've got some changes that need to be committed here. So that's good. So then at that point, I'm going to say, let's commit this. And I'm going to say, added my hometown. And then we can do a git push. And it should, in theory, get us to push this all with all of this. It's a lot of text there, but that means that it worked.
So I think what I did was I think I forgot the git add, and I think in my mind git add was add the file initially, but that's not the case. So
right.
Even though the file's been added, the git add is actually saying, yeah, it's okay.
More like add the changes than it is add the file.
Okay.
It adds them to what's called the staging area. The staging area is basically saying like these are all getting ready to be committed, but you have to manually yourself say these are the files that I want. I don't want to commit this one, and so you have to choose them all manually yourself. It's not very often that you only want to commit some files, but in theory you could. So that's why you have to add them to the staging area before you can commit them. Does that kind of make a little more sense?
Absolutely, and that was totally what my problem was that I missed. So, okay.
Yeah. That was my problem too.
No worries. Yeah. So that's the thing. That's why I wanted to kind of do this again. Make the changes, and you always have to add them. So before you commit, you always have to add. It's like kind of weird, and I agree. It doesn't really make a ton of sense, like naturally to us. So this is the cycle. You just make changes, add them, commit them, push if you're pushing to GitHub, which you should. And then
sorry.
No, you're good. Go for it.
So add is basically like preloading the documents for sending to the server. The commit is actually doing, okay.
Right. Like, when you're choosing a file to put on your Google Drive, you have to go there and click them all. Kind of the same thing, I guess. Okay. And that's the process. So once you've done the cloning, right, it's really just these 4 things over and over again. Make the changes, add, commit, push until you're done, right? And like I think it was Ray that said it, commit fairly often, right? The interval doesn't necessarily matter a ton. It should just be consistent. Something that was hard for me was just to get that consistency, to be able to remember, oh, I need to commit this, even if I haven't done anything in a while. I just, it's been a half an hour or an hour or so. What you could do is just set a timer like on your phone, or download a free timer app on your Mac and just have it continually. Let me just commit. That's a way to kind of get in the habit of committing multiple times a day. So, All right, the last thing I want to talk about here for the last half hour is kind of going back to your sprint retrospective form, or sorry, not sprint retrospective form, but your, let me jump back to this. Okay, so these are the retrospectives that you fill out at the end of the day. And it says, use your GitHub pull request link, and you know, just put like a dash or something here. Oh, sorry about that. I told you to do that, and it looks like that doesn't work. Sorry about that. Now on, you'll actually have a real pull request link. So let's talk about what pull requests are. This is, well, let's go to one of my favorite repositories, which is Swift. Swift itself is open source, which is super cool. It wasn't originally open source, but the language itself is just on GitHub, which is pretty cool. So you could actually go see how the language works. What you can see here is 8.2 thousand people have made a fork of the language. And what that means is maybe they're like, I have this really cool idea for a feature of the language that I want everyone to be able to benefit from. What they'll do is, because Apple owns this and they can't just push their own code to Apple's repository of Swift, they fork it, they make the changes on their repository, and what they can do is they can create what's called a pull request and say, hey, I've made some changes. I want you to basically merge those changes into your original repository. And it basically goes through this process of sort of a review, and for Swift, it's more complicated than that. But at the very least, you can see we have a bunch of pull requests here. So we can see like, I don't know, always write out nested types tables or something. So they're able to basically say, all right, here are the changes that I made. And, you know, Apple could say, yeah, that looks good. Let's have everyone benefit from these changes. And they can merge those into their original repository. So pull requests are something you'll do all the time. That would be generally how you would work at a company where you've got, you know, your company's app. And actually just yesterday, let's see if I can find it. Let me see if I can. Yeah. John actually made a pull request yesterday for the solution of the afternoon project of the knock list. So I can see that he made some commits in his own fork of the module project solution. And then he made a commit, or he made a pull request and said, hey, I fixed some things in the solution. And I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. And then I merged them so that now it's in Lambda School's own repository. Getting in this process of committing, pushing, and then when you're like, all right, my project is done or my feature's done, let me make a pull request, is very much a real world use case for things. We're going to have you just submit pull requests so that we can review your projects and know where they come from. But this process is very much something that you would do at a company, which is kind of why we do it like this. So if I go back to, where were we at? We were at about me. Ooh, I have a bunch. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, I want to merge in my changes from my About Me. So if you go to your GitHub page right now for your About Me repository and refresh the page, you should see that you have around 7 commits or so. It may be different than that, but you'll have this little line here that says this branch is X amount of commits ahead of Lambda School master, which means Lambda Schools is basically behind what you have done because we just added the name and the hometown. So the process of making a pull request, which you'll be doing every afternoon for the project, is as follows. You can go over to Lambda Schools and make the pull request from here. From there, although I think it's easier to just click this little pull request button right here that shows up. or you can click new pull request. There's a bunch of ways to make pull requests. They all go to the same thing though. And then what that's going to do is it's going to start comparing these changes and seeing what the base repository is, or sort of where this code that we want to merge into should go to. We're saying we want it to go to Lambda School's About Me project, to its master branch. Again, not really worrying about too much with branches right now. This head repository should show your About Me repository. And usually it should say that it's able to merge. If it doesn't, let one of us know and we can help you out with that, but it should always be able to merge. And then from here, what I want you all to do is create the pull request. So click this little create pull request button right here. And then we have to basically say what we've done, and that's where, going back to these pull requests, that's what it shows right here. So I'm just going to say, again, just kind of giving a brief description of what you've done here. So I'm just going to say, added my name and hometown. That works great. And then, you know, if this was like some feature, you'd say like, I added this feature, and, you know, you can kind of keep going down as much and be as descriptive as you want to here. But at the very least for you, this is what you'll do. And then I ask the TLs this every time because I forget. TLs, do you prefer that they tag you with like an assignee, or they just like leave a comment with your username?
Just add my username works.
All right,
Yeah,
yes.
that's easier probably.
Okay. All right, yeah, so in the comments section here, if you just put like John Bash or whoever your TL is, what that's going to do is give them a notification so that they can actually see your pull request. And then at the very end, you just hit create pull request. Sorry, John, you might get like bombarded with a bunch of notifications now.
Send all of them to John. It's fine.
Yeah, send them all to John. So now he is going to
I wasn't getting a name complete on John Bash. Should I like do a friend request or something, or is that just you've done it in the past and it's just showing?
I don't know.
You just need friends, as long as you tag the correct handle, because handles are unique.
Yeah.
Add and then the correct GitHub username. So whatever John's GitHub username is.
John Bash. Yeah.
And it might not auto-populate because sometimes it's weird like that. But as long as you get it the right username, it'll notify us.
Yeah.
And I've got it pinned in my Slack channel if you ever need it.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah. Worst case, just ask them and they will be able to get that to you. And so that's kind of the process. So from here, this would be your pull request link. So you could just jump up to here, grab this, and it says, you know, Lambda School About Me poll. This is the 4th pull request. And so you would just bring that into your retrospective form if I still had it up, which I don't. Oops, not that one. There we go. And that's what you'll put right there in your where can we find your project. All right, we have about 20 minutes left. So what I'd like to do is answer any questions that you have right now. And then we could even get you a little bit started on your afternoon project altogether. We're not going to go super far, but we can at least make sure that we're cloning everything right and kind of starting you off right for the afternoon. So what questions do you have about anything that we're doing here?
So I kind of missed the pull request, like how you do that. So if like we could just rehash that really quickly, just so I can get a basic understanding.
Yeah, for sure. So once you're done like committing and pushing, you've finished whatever you're doing, whether it's your afternoon project or whatever it is. Let me jump back to here. If you go to GitHub, then you can click this new pull request button on your fork of the repository. So for me, I'm on the About Me one. I'm just going to click pull request here. Oh, I've already got the pull request here, so it's not going to let me. Hold on just 1 minute. I'm going to close it.
Yeah, no problem.
There we go. So it'll say create new pull request here, and you don't really ever have to change any, like the base or head repository. It should be able to figure that out for you. So you just click this create pull request button, and you just give a title, just like say what you've done. Just say, you know, finished. I don't know. I would say maybe something like finish the afternoon project. I'm not sure if the TLs think that that's not maybe the best habit to get into. I don't know. I don't generally review the pull requests.
Pull either when the project is done or at the end of the day, because you have to submit a retrospective every day and it needs that URL. But don't worry if it's like not done. It's not a big deal. Just try to get everything you can done. Submit your pull request and module retro, and then that'll work. Don't do a pull request every time you push changes.
Right, yeah. You only have to make a pull request once, and it'll track all of those changes.
Yeah, whatever comes first, either if you finish the project or 4 p.m. is kind of the way I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, either way is great. So you could, you know, name it like Spencer Curtis finished project or something. That might be a little bit helpful just because sometimes you have usernames that don't actually say your name in them. So it can be a little bit hard for us to know who you are. So if you want to do that, that would maybe be helpful. And then you just tag your TL, like John or whoever it is, and then hit this create pull request button. And then that is done. You've created the pull request, and see now I'm number 16 on the pull requests. So when you go to submit your retrospective in the afternoon, when that link gets sent out, you can just copy this URL of your pull request here and paste it right into your where can we find your project.
On our comments for the commits, how detailed should we really be, especially like if we're going fast and we're putting on a lot of functionality at one time? Like say even 20 or 30 minutes, you just summarize more or less?
Yeah, I mean, the pull request is basically it. So we can actually see here John's pull request that he did actually.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just meant on commits, like before you do your pull request. Like, I mean,
yeah.
just like real simple summaries.
Yeah, if you like, let me just kind of fudge this here. Oh, you know what? I can actually edit this now that I'm going to.
I mean, our industry is notorious for bad on comments and bad on commits. So
That's
really,
true.
just think about your future self. So your future self is going to come here and look at that commit, and whatever is going to nudge you into saying, you know, added hometown, or, you know, be as brief as or verbose as you want. But again, it's more about your future self knowing what the heck did I do in this commit.
Yeah,
That's true.
I'd rather have you err on the side of being more descriptive than not, right? Just don't say like added changes. That's the worst. I've seen this, right? So you can say something like updated my table view controller, right? And that's like, okay, well, that's something. Then you could say changed the cell size to 20 or something like that, and you could go into more detail. But at the very least, like, don't get in the habit of just saying like changes. That's the worst. No one likes that. Then when you come back to this and you're like, I, you know, maybe you're like, I've kind of coded myself into a corner. Let me go back to some previous commits, and they all say changes. You're like, I have no clue what any of these changes are, right? Yeah. So, like Mark is saying, just for your own sanity, be descriptive, I would say.
Yeah.
I only asked because you. Sorry.
It's important too, because if you get into a build week with a team, one of my team members in my last build week actually did like a force push and broke the project. I had to revert it, and if I didn't have those accurate commit messages, I wouldn't have known which version to revert the whole project to.
Right. So here's an example. Like here are just some commit messages I've done. except for the updating the README, because that's just what it defaults to. But like fix styling for authentication page, update the get ignore, finish converting HTML. Like I can very easily see what I've done. That itself is enough for me. And if you want to go into more detail, then that's great. But even a very quick one sentence is great.
Yeah, I only asked because with Unity you can be lazy because it kind of tracks everything you do, and
Right.
then with your commenting, obviously that's on you. So my programming, it's like the program itself is commented well, but then when you push, you really don't have to add much because it just kind of tracks everything you're doing. So this is definitely going to have to be habit forming for me.
Yeah, and that's fine. Getting into that habit is not a bad idea to just kind of do it yourself. So
Cool. Thanks.
yeah, you're welcome. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I did.
Any other questions?
So I'll make the comment. The terminology with Git has always, I've always struggled with it, and I'll tell everybody that, you know, the thing that helps me think about it is pull request is really from Spencer's and the TL's perspective, not our perspective. So
right.
We're asking them to pull our request. In other words, from our perspective as the learners, we almost think of it probably as a push request, or, you know,
yeah.
I don't know. Terms really stink in my opinion. And so, yeah, so if you think about, okay, Spencer, please pull this code from me because I would like you to take my code. So think of it that way. And the other thing that kind of hurts my brain, and I probably know too much, is I'm thinking, oh, we're all pushing the same 2 lines of code. This will never merge. And I will just try to block that out of my mind and just realize that this is the way you want it, that we're all doing the same thing. And I guess on the back end, this makes maybe more sense that you have all these pull requests that you would never in a million years merge, but from a management perspective, this is the way to get code to you. Because like, as you said, we've maybe done 20 commits and maybe even push those up to the cloud, as it were. But ultimately, by doing a pull request, we're saying, this is the completed one. This is the one we want you to look at. Take this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely won't merge everyone's same 2 lines of code. That would not be a great idea. So yeah, it really is just a management perspective and kind of just getting you in that habit of making pull requests, because that really is something that you'll be doing on the daily, if not multiple times a day. So at a real job. Okay, so let's go ahead and run through our afternoon project today. It's going to be, you're not going to be doing any real coding today. It's all just kind of getting, again, a little bit more comfortable with Git. So if we look at the project here, I'll Slack this to you. If you want to follow along, I'd recommend it, or you can just start this afternoon. Either way is great. We can see this is a Lambda school repository, and we have a 1.5 or 1.2 thousand forks, which is pretty cool. So if we look down here, it's really just a matter of you doing what we've just done this morning, so there isn't much of a difference here. What you can do, though, is skip all of this Git configuration stuff, because we have already done that this morning. So you can just completely gloss over that and just jump down to this challenge details here. So we're going to do these first 2 steps together, and that's where I'll kind of leave you. I don't want to do the whole thing with you. That would kind of defeat the purpose of the afternoon project. But let's fork this repository to our personal GitHub account, and then let's clone it down to our computers so that we're all kind of good to go from there. So can anyone remind me how to fork a repository?
Top right, fork.
Perfect.
Green.
Yep.
Oh, no, sorry, not green.
Yeah, a little fork in the road looking button. I've already forked this, so I'm just gonna grab it here. And then again, we'll just grab this little, to fork it, or sorry, to clone it, we're just gonna click this clone or download button. I'm just gonna click this button, although if you want, you can just double click the text and hit Command C, either way. And then let's pull over our terminal window. And if I do pwd, I'm still in my About Me folder, so I don't want to put this Git repository in my About Me, but I kind of want to just go up to my development iOS 15 folder. So I'm kind of in a brand new separate folder here. So can anyone help me get back up to the folder above where I'm at right now?
Is it CD dot dot?
It is CD.
Well, space.
Yep.
Space is important.
Space is important, and it's really easy to mess those up. It'll take CD dot. Then we can see if we do pwd now, we're now in just the iOS 15 folder. And you know, again, if you're like not super comfortable with doing cd dot dot and everything, like the easiest thing to do is just to do, you know, cd space and then be like, oh yeah, this is the exact folder I want, my development iOS 14 or 15, and you're solid, you know you're in the right place. Either way it works the same. So from here, can anyone remind me how to clone my forked repository? Someone that hasn't talked yet. Maybe Sean?
Me?
Oh, there's two Seans.
Yeah.
I was looking at Sean James.
Oh, okay. Git clone, git space clone,
And then what do we have to put after this?
and then paste the copied URL.
Yes, perfect. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then it's going to say that it's cloning and give us kind of a bunch of garbage text that we don't really have to worry about. But we can see over here, we've got this Lambda hello, and that's where we'll kind of leave off here. So if I do git status here, why isn't this working for me? Why is it saying that I'm not a Git repository when I just clone this?
You haven't opened it yet.
Good guess. You're maybe on the right track. Can anyone
You have
help?
to CD into the right directory.
Right, yeah, we're not in the right directory. We're still in the development iOS 15 folder. So if we want to go into Lambda hello, we'll just do cd space, and then we could either drag it or just do Lambda hello, just typing it out ourselves. And then if we do git status, we're good to go. Okay, so I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with Git. I know it is maybe not the most fun lesson, but this is something that you'll get used to very quickly, and it will become second nature to you. So don't really worry about it. Just kind of keep doing this every day like we're going to have you be doing. And seriously, in no time, by the end of even this unit, you'll feel 100% comfortable with what we're doing today. So there's more to get, but we'll be talking about that later. And you don't have to worry about it too much right now. So are there any last questions before we head out to lunch? Okay.
For the branch challenge, is that something we learned in the TK videos, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me double check. Maybe not. Not really, no. We haven't really looked at branches in here. You could definitely look online for like if you just do like git branching, I'm sure you'd be able to find something, yeah. Or like, yeah, how to make a branch or something in Git, like, oh yeah, Patrick just threw out a cheat sheet, it looks like, so that would be helpful as well. And for those challenges, like they're supposed to be purposely things that, you know, we haven't done, so it's supposed to push you a little bit, and that's okay. So we will talk about it eventually. All right. Any other questions? Sam? You good? Do you have any questions? Okay. Okay, cool. All right then. Have a great lunch. We'll come back at 12 o'clock, and we'll get started on the afternoon project. Thanks, guys. See you later.